can't really tell you what's wrong with kids, but I can tell you what the hell wrong with parents. It's like haters. When you get haters, you know, people's opinion of you is none of your business. I have lots of hate.
The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation, a charged silence that seemed to press down on everyone inside. Steve Harvey, a man whose brand had long been built on charisma and family values, took the stand in a moment that no one, least of all Sean Diddy Combs, could have seen coming. For years, Harvey had cultivated an image of stability, a man who preached about relationships and faith, who smiled easily and brought levity to audiences across the globe. But now, in this trial that had already gripped the public imagination with its salacious details and dark allegations, Harvey's presence felt like the turning of a tide. This wasn't just another witness. This was personal.
I'm having a bad day right now.
From the moment he began, Harvey's testimony was electric. His demeanor, usually warm and disarming, had hardened into something steely, almost vengeful. He left no room for ambiguity as he laid out his knowledge of Diddy's infamous gatherings, events that had been whispered about in entertainment circles for years, but had rarely been spoken of in public. These were not the glamorous parties that made headlines. These were private, insidious affairs that Harvey described as meticulously choreographed productions, events designed to strip participants of their autonomy while ensuring that every detail was recorded for leverage.
But you gotta understand, you gotta forgive your fathers, because they human too. They made mistakes.
Harvey recounted how Diddy's team operated like a well-oiled machine, managing the logistics of these gatherings with military precision. The settings were always luxurious, he said, with high-end suites reserved in exclusive hotels around the globe. But behind the opulent facade was a darker reality. The rooms were equipped with hidden surveillance equipment strategically placed to capture incriminating footage of attendees. According to Harvey, these recordings weren't just for personal amusement, they were weapons. He claimed Diddy had built an archive of these tapes, which he used to silence anyone who might one day pose a threat to him. The implication was chilling. No one left these gatherings unscathed, and no one walked away free.
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge, iconic, TV star or movie star.
The prosecution leaned heavily on Harvey's account to bolster their case against Diddy, framing the recordings as a central pillar of the alleged criminal enterprise. They argued that these tapes weren't just about control. They were evidence of a system designed to exploit and entrap. Harvey's testimony described a web of coercion that extended far beyond Diddy himself, implicating a network of enablers who ensured that everything, from the procurement of participants to the cleanup operations afterward, ran smoothly. Harvey painted a damning picture of an industry that had long protected its most powerful players, even as they preyed on the vulnerable. The courtroom grew even more tense as Harvey delved into his own experiences with Diddy's circle. He confessed that he had long been aware of the rumors surrounding these gatherings, but had chosen to distance himself rather than confront what he suspected might be happening. However, he revealed that his perspective shifted dramatically after a series of incidents that hit far closer to home. Chief among them was the persistent rumor of Diddy's alleged affair with Harvey's wife, Marjorie. While Harvey stopped short of confirming the affair outright, he described a pattern of behavior that suggested Diddy had little regard for boundaries, personal or otherwise.
Man, Marjorie, the thing that Marjorie's not telling you all.
Telling everybody's business? Okay, now don't let me start telling Steve's business.
The timeline was damning. It aligned too closely with the period when Marjorie and Steve's relationship was under intense scrutiny, with whispers of past connections to questionable figures resurfacing in the media. Harvey's testimony hinted at a long-standing feud between the two men, one that had been fueled not just by personal grievances, but by Diddy's alleged attempts to undermine Harvey's family. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a deeply personal war, one that Harvey seemed determined to win, not just for himself, but for those who, like him, had felt the ripple effects of Diddy's actions.
A minute, but what would you say? What's been the key to our success?
The fact that you respect me and I respect you.
And then there was the matter of Lori Harvey. The public had long speculated about her rumored relationship with Diddy, a pairing that had raised eyebrows not only because of their age gap, but also because of Lori's previous romantic links to Diddy's son, Justin. While Lori had publicly denied dating Justin, the optics of her subsequent association with Diddy were hard to ignore. Steve Harvey's testimony didn't directly address these rumors, but his very presence in the trial spoke volumes. It was as though he were reclaiming his family's narrative, refusing to let Diddy's influence taint his carefully constructed image of stability and respectability. Harvey's testimony also touched on the broader implications of Diddy's alleged behavior. He described a culture of fear and silence that permeated the entertainment industry, where powerful figures could act with impunity, knowing that their wealth and influence would shield them from accountability. Harvey suggested that Diddy's gatherings were emblematic of this culture, a microcosm of an industry that had long prioritized profit and prestige over ethics. He recounted stories he had heard from others in the industry, tales of careers ruined and reputations destroyed after crossing paths with Diddy.
Because we now know who all the prosecutors will be on Diddy's trial. They're all women. They have assembled a team of female prosecutors, and that is definitely not by accident.
The prosecution presented corroborating evidence that aligned disturbingly well with Harvey's account. Security footage from a 2016 incident at a Los Angeles hotel showed Diddy dragging and assaulting his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, after she allegedly tried to leave one of these gatherings. The footage had already shocked jurors when it was first introduced, but Harvey's testimony gave it new context, framing it as part of a much larger pattern of behavior. Prosecutors argued that the video was not an isolated incident, but a glimpse into the violent undercurrent that defined Diddy's alleged criminal enterprise.
The feds, Al Capone style, have not charged everything under the sun. They've charged 3 main charges: racketeering, trafficking, and the transport of a. And I'll tell you, I don't know about the racketeering charge. It's pretty sweeping, and I'll tell you what the general elements are.
As Harvey stepped down from the stand, the room was left in stunned silence. His testimony had been a masterclass in controlled fury, a blend of personal grievances and damning allegations that left little room for doubt. But even as he exited, the tension in the courtroom didn't dissipate. If anything, it deepened. Harvey's words had illuminated a side of the entertainment industry that many had long suspected but few had dared to confront. And yet, his testimony felt like just the tip of the iceberg. It was clear that the trial had become about more than just Diddy. It was a reckoning for an entire system that had enabled him. The revelations didn't just cast a shadow over Diddy's empire. They also raised uncomfortable questions about Harvey himself. How much did he know? And for how long? Why had he chosen to speak out now, after years of silence? And what role, if any, had his own actions, or inactions, played in allowing this alleged behavior to continue? These questions hung in the air as the trial moved forward, promising even more explosive revelations in the days to come. The courtroom might have exhaled, but no one was breathing easy. Not yet.
Now, you know what, Steve? For my safety, I'm gonna say allegedly. But if this man don't say allegedly, and he tells the truth, you can't get mad at me, Stephen.
And just as Steve Harvey's damning testimony sent shockwaves through the trial, the fallout from his revelations began to spread like wildfire, igniting even darker corners of Diddy's alleged empire. This wasn't just about one man anymore. It was about the entire ecosystem that let these alleged horrors thrive. And suddenly, the focus wasn't just on Diddy's actions, but on the intricate machinery that kept his secrets buried for so long. From high-profile enablers to whispered scandals, the trial had cracked open a Pandora's box of allegations, and the ripple effects were impossible to ignore.
Like I said, Steve Harvey has known for years that I've been messing with Marjorie for years.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I'm about to give you...
What emerged next was the sinister role of blackmail, a weapon that Diddy allegedly wielded like a master manipulator. The tapes, those incriminating recordings Harvey alluded to, were not just urban legends whispered about in industry circles. According to multiple sources tied to the case, these tapes were very real and far more damning than anyone had imagined. They weren't just insurance against potential whistleblowers. They were a form of control, a means to bend even the most powerful individuals to Diddy's will. Attorneys connected to the case claimed that these recordings captured moments so compromising that their mere existence could obliterate careers, destroy reputations, and send shockwaves through the highest echelons of Hollywood and beyond.
To not be involved with a famous singer, to not come out, here's the price. And that they're just selling to the individuals that are in those, this is what I heard, they're selling those videos. So if you're Tommy X, and Tommy X is a big, big movie star, and he was at some of the Diddy parties, he was in one of those bedrooms with 3 other men, and he's happily married to a woman, and blah. Tommy doesn't want that video to come out. He does not want it to come out.
But here's where things get even more disturbing. Whispers of a bidding war over these tapes began to surface. Multiple insiders claimed that representatives from some of the most elite names in entertainment, actors, musicians, even executives, were scrambling behind the scenes to keep their clients' names out of the courtroom and, more importantly, out of public view. The stakes were astronomical. It wasn't just about avoiding embarrassment. It was about protecting empires. And yet, the more money that allegedly changed hands, the more questions arose about just how many people were implicated in this web of secrecy. The tapes weren't the only tools of control, though. Testimony from other witnesses began to paint a chilling picture of how Diddy's alleged network operated. Employees were reportedly instructed to facilitate his demands without question, often going to extraordinary lengths to ensure his instructions were carried out to the letter. One former assistant who spoke anonymously through their legal team claimed that their role extended beyond the mundane tasks of scheduling meetings or booking flights. They alleged that they were often asked to procure supplies for his private gatherings and ensure that everything, from the lighting to the guest list, was exactly as Diddy wanted it. Failure, they said, was not an option. And if anyone dared to step out of line, well, the existence of those tapes ensured that few ever did.
Big Boom is in the building. You know what I mean? And I know it's going to be a lot of hateration, holleration in this dancery.
But perhaps the most explosive revelation came from the victims themselves. As more people came forward, a pattern began to emerge. Stories that echoed Cassie Ventura's testimony, but added new, chilling dimensions to the allegations. One individual, who had worked as part of a hotel's event management team, described being approached by Diddy's staff with unusual requests. They recalled being asked to ensure that certain floors of the hotel were vacated entirely, allegedly to guarantee privacy. Another source, who claimed to have been present at one of these infamous gatherings, described an atmosphere of tension so thick it was almost suffocating. They alleged that no one spoke freely, that every word and action seemed calculated to avoid drawing attention or wrath.
Unfortunately, we're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done.
And then there were the cleanup crews. Multiple witnesses described seeing teams arrive in the early hours of the morning, tasked with ensuring that no trace of what had occurred the night before remained. Hotel staff were reportedly paid handsomely to keep quiet. But as the trial continued, some of these individuals began to break their silence. One account described a hotel suite left in such a state of disarray that it required an entire day to restore. The individual claimed they had been offered an envelope of cash and a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for their silence. They signed the document, but years later, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had been complicit in something far darker. That he has, with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case, you would have others charged. It was a statute designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove, like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts. And what about the Harveys? If Steve's testimony was a grenade tossed into the courtroom, the aftermath was a full-blown explosion. Almost immediately, whispers about Marjorie Harvey's past began to resurface. For years, rumors had circulated about her alleged connections to individuals involved in less than legal activities before she married Steve. Critics were quick to point out the irony. Here was a man who had built his brand on preaching about morality and relationships, now entangled in a trial that was dredging up skeletons from his own family's closet. Was Steve truly the whistleblower he appeared to be, or was his testimony an attempt to deflect attention from his own household? Marjorie Harvey's past wasn't just a footnote in this unfolding drama. It was a firestorm waiting to reignite, long before she became the glamorous wife of a media mogul. Her name had reportedly surfaced in federal investigations tied to her previous relationships. According to rumors that had followed her for years, Marjorie had been romantically involved with two men who were eventually convicted of operating large-scale illegal enterprises. While she herself was never charged, the associations were enough to raise eyebrows, especially given the lavish lifestyle she enjoyed during that time. Critics wondered aloud if her ability to evade legal trouble had been sheer luck or something far more calculated.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So I love my man, but what you mean, but?
Adding to the intrigue, whispers of a sealed court filing from the early 2000s suddenly began circulating online, drawing renewed scrutiny to Marjorie's past. Speculation mounted over whether these documents contained details that might connect her to her former partner's operations. Some reports suggested that investigators had once considered her a person of interest but lacked the evidence to move forward. For years, Steve had worked tirelessly to bury these rumors, presenting Marjorie as the perfect partner who had helped rebuild his life after his second divorce. But now, with Diddy's trial dragging their family into the spotlight, those old allegations seemed to be clawing their way back into the public conversation. The strain on Steve and Marjorie's carefully curated image was palpable. While Steve had always been quick to defend his wife publicly, insiders claimed that the renewed focus on her past had created tension behind the scenes. One source, close to the couple, alleged that Steve was furious about how the trial had dredged up their private lives, reportedly telling confidants that Diddy's actions had put his family in the crosshairs. And yet, there were whispers that Steve's own team was quietly conducting damage control, allegedly reaching out to media outlets to quash any stories that might delve too deeply into Marjorie's history. The question now wasn't just whether Steve's testimony would help convict Diddy. It was whether his family's image could survive the fallout.
So I don't give them no energy. I give haters no energy. Steve ain't this, he think he this. You don't even know me.
And then there was Lori Harvey. The trial had thrust her back into the spotlight, and not in a way anyone expected. As more details about Diddy's alleged gatherings surfaced, Lori's rumored involvement with him suddenly took on a much darker tone. While there was no evidence suggesting she had been directly involved in anything untoward, the very fact that her name had been linked to Diddy's added yet another layer of complexity to an already tangled web. Was she just an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire, or was there more to the story than met the eye?
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have.
As the trial stretched on, the courtroom became a theater of the absurd, with each new revelation more shocking than the last. Witnesses who had once been loyal to Diddy began to turn, sharing details that painted a picture of a man who had allegedly built his empire not just on talent and charisma, but on fear and control. One former bodyguard described a culture of absolute loyalty, where questioning orders was not just discouraged, but punished. Another individual, who had worked as part of Diddy's personal security team, alleged that they had been instructed to confiscate phones and other recording devices from guests at his private events.
Now, you know that daughter, Lori Harvey, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm Lori Harvey's father.
You are Lori Harvey's father?
By now, it was clear that this trial wasn't just about Diddy or even the people around him. It was about an entire industry that had allowed these alleged abuses to occur unchecked for years. The entertainment world, with all its glitz and glamour, had been exposed as a place where power and privilege often trumped accountability. And as more witnesses took the stand, it became increasingly evident that Diddy's trial was merely the tip of the iceberg. How many others had operated in the shadows, protected by the same systems that were now being called into question? But here's the real question. How far will this go? With every new revelation, the stakes only get higher. Will the tape surface? And if so, who else might they implicate? How many more victims or witnesses will come forward, and what secrets are they holding? And perhaps, most importantly, what will this mean for the future of an industry that has long thrived on its ability to keep its darkest corners hidden from view? Let us know your thoughts down below, because this story is far from over. And trust us, you're going to want to stick around for what's coming next. See you in the next one.